Snow clawed at her face like fingers from the grave. She woke choking on the cold, mouth filled with blood and ice. The wind howled across the canyon, thick with white fury, drowning out even her scream. Her fingers barely moved. Skin blistered, nails cracked. She didn't know how long she'd been lying there, half buried in the snow, but the pain in her ribs told her she'd been thrown from a horse, or worse. Her name came back in broken syllables. Clara Dawson. She blinked against the white sky. Her husband's face burned behind her eyes. Samuel. He'd kissed her forehead that morning with frozen lips and said, "I'll scout ahead, make sure it's safe." She'd smiled, trusted him, pulled the blanket tighter around her, and waited. He never came back. Hours later, a blow to the head, then darkness. She remembered his boots crunching snow, the clink of a flask as he muttered something about starting over. She wasn't supposed to wake up. The fall had cracked a rib, and the betrayal had cracked everything else. She tried to scream, but coughed instead. Blood, not snow, came up this time. Her vision tilted sideways as she dragged herself forward, clawing a path through the frost. Each inch tasted like death. She didn't know where she was crawling to. There were no signs, no trees close enough to shelter her, just open land and dying breath. She wasn't dressed for survival. Only a thin wool coat, soaked and torn at the shoulder. Her bonnet was gone. Her boots were laced crooked, one nearly falling off. She could feel her feet going numb. And she knew down deep in that place women always feel things first, that if she stopped now, the snow would take her. "Move," she whispered to herself. Her voice cracked like a snapped twig. She remembered the stories her mother used to tell, about wolves who wore men's faces, and women who vanished in the snow, never found until spring. That would be her. One more pretty ghost the town would gossip about. Clara Dawson, they'd say. Such a pretty girl. Shame about what happened. Probably ran off, or froze up there like a fool. Her jaw clenched. She wouldn't die here. The wind screamed again, sharp and brutal. Something rustled nearby. A shape moved at the edge of her vision. A blur, tall, walking upright. For a moment, she thought it was Samuel. Maybe he'd come back. Maybe he regretted it. She turned her head too fast, and the world spun. Darkness yawned at the edges of her mind. The figure didn't vanish. Heavy footsteps approached. Deliberate, calm, not the stagger of a drunk or the rush of a man chasing profit. The crunch of snow slowed until it stopped beside her. She tried to sit up. Pain ripped through her side. She gasped. A shadow blocked out the sky. Large, wrapped in thick hides. Hair braided with bits of bone and copper. Not Samuel. Not white. A man, Cheyenne, she realized, stood over her, face unreadable. His gaze swept across her broken frame, without flinching, not shocked, not smug, just seeing her. She braced herself. For what? She didn't know. Death, maybe. A scalping, like the dime novels warned. Maybe he'd leave her too. Or worse, not leave her. But then he did something she didn't expect. He knelt. No words. No weapons. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck, checking for breath. Then one hand gently turned her face toward the light. Her eyes fluttered. She saw his hand, calloused and warm, move toward her mouth, and she flinched. He stopped, waited, then slowly offered her a water skin. Her lips cracked as he touched it to them. She drank. It burned, but it was real. Her chest ached with each swallow. His voice came low and quiet, heavy with an accent but solid. "You breathe," he said. "Good." She blinked up at him. "You gonna kill me?" He raised one eyebrow. "Not yet." For the first time, she almost smiled. Or maybe that was delirium. He slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her shoulders. She hissed at the contact. Her ribs screamed in protest. But he lifted her like she weighed nothing, turning toward the distant tree line. "You..." "Cheyenne," she rasped. He didn't answer. She tilted her head toward his face. Snow clung to his lashes. His jaw was dusted with frost. A long scar split the line from ear to chin, like a blade once tried to take half his voice. The cold crept deeper into her bones. She barely remembered what warmth felt like. He moved fast, boots crunching over the snow-covered ridge. She bounced in his grip, but didn't complain. She was too tired to fight. Her head pressed weakly against his chest, hearing the steady thump of his heart beneath layers of fur. Warmth. Steady. Real. She didn't speak again. Couldn't. But her thoughts ran wild. Why help her? Why not rob her? Why not leave her like the others? Maybe he had someone, once. A sister. A wife. Maybe he'd seen what men like Samuel do and swore he'd never walk past a body in the snow again. Or maybe he just wasn't a coward. Her fingers twitched against his coat, grasping instinctively. She closed her eyes. The wind howled behind them, blowing her blood and footprints back into the storm. Whatever happened next, she wasn't alone. Not anymore. She woke in firelight and silence. The world was warm now. Strange, after so long in the cold. She blinked slowly, trying to make sense of her surroundings. Furs were piled around her, layered thick over a bed of woven grass and hide. A teepee. Shadows danced across painted leather as fire crackled somewhere close. Her breath no longer came out in mist. Pain anchored her to her body. Her side throbbed. Her lip was split. Her arms were stiff, wrapped in bandages she didn't remember receiving. She tried to sit up and found herself too weak. Panic nipped at the edge of her chest. Then he stepped into view. The man from the snow. He carried a clay bowl in one hand and a damp cloth in the other. His dark hair hung in two loose braids over his shoulders, and his face was unreadable, carved by time and weather. She remembered the scar on his jaw, the way he hadn't spoken unless he needed to, the strength in his arms, the quiet way he watched her, like she wasn't prey or problem, just something that needed saving. She flinched when he stepped closer, but he made no move to touch her. Instead, he knelt by the fire, set the bowl down, and dipped the cloth into warm water. Without asking, he offered it to her, not pressed against her skin, just held out, waiting. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. He steadied the bowl when she nearly spilled it. "Thank you," she said hoarsely. "I don't know your name." He paused, then pointed to himself. "Tassanen." She repeated it slowly. "Tassanen." He nodded once, then pointed to her. "Clara," she said. A longer pause. His gaze flicked the scar on her temple, then back to her eyes. "You live," he said. Storm tried. It lost. A flicker or something. Dry amusement. Tug at the corner of his mouth. She stared at him. A joke? Maybe. Or maybe just a warrior's way of saying she was tougher than death. She dipped the cloth again and pressed it gently to her face. Her skin stung beneath the dried blood. She tried not to wince. Tried to ignore the silence between them. Thick and unfamiliar. "I don't remember much," she admitted. "Just falling. And your face. You bleed. Ribs hurt. Cold took your hands." He said it like a weather report. "I figured that much." "You sleep 2 days." Her eyes widened. 2 days? He nodded. "Eat. Then sleep again." Clara looked down. A second bowl, smaller, carved from wood, waited near the fire. Something broth-like steamed inside. She hesitated, then reached for it. It was bitter and earthy, but it didn't taste like poison. It tasted like survival. "Did you find me by accident?" "No accident." "Then why'd you help me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached toward the fire, grabbed a stick, and stirred the embers. Sparks leapt. Shadows twisted. "Snow takes too many," he said finally. "One more? No good." She studied him, unsure what to make of that. He didn't look like a man burdened by sentiment. He looked like someone who'd seen too much and chose silence over story. Still, she wanted to ask, why save a white woman, alone in the snow? Why risk it? But her breath trembled when she tried. The truth was still raw. Her memory sharpened in pieces. Samuel was back as he walked away, the crunch of snow under his boots, his face when he turned and looked at her one last time. Cold, distant, like she was just a task he'd finished. She gripped the bowl tighter. Tassanen watched her without speaking, not pitying, just waiting. You ever been betrayed? She asked suddenly. The question came out like a wound. His face didn't change. But he looked away, into the fire, and nodded once. Many times. A silence settled between them, this one less awkward, more like understanding. She set the bowl aside and tried to sit straighter. Her muscles screamed. She pressed her hand to her ribs and hissed. He stood and crossed the teepee in 3 long strides. From a pack near the entrance, he pulled a strip of leather and a pouch of herbs. Returning, he knelt again and set the items beside her. Hold, he said, gesturing to her side. She narrowed her eyes. You gonna touch me? I fix ribs. Only wrap. She hesitated, then nodded. He worked with efficiency and surprising gentleness. His fingers moved quickly, avoiding raw skin, tightening the wrap around her torso. The smell of the herbs, pungent and sweet, filled the air. You've done this before, she muttered through gritted teeth. He gave her a sideways glance. Many fool men fall from horses. Her laugh came unexpectedly. It startled even her. Guess I'm a fool woman, then. No. He tied the leather knot with practiced hands. You are a live woman. The distinction hit harder than she expected. She leaned back once he was done, breathing shallowly to avoid aggravating the pain. Outside, the wind had died. Snow still fell, but soft now, like ash from fading fire. You live here alone? He didn't answer right away. Then, only now, she let the silence grow. There was a heaviness to his words. Loss, maybe, or exile. She didn't press. You can keep me prisoner? She asked after a while. It was half a joke, half not. He looked her over. The bruises, the bandages, the shiver still hiding under her skin. You are no prisoner, he said. She believed him. Still, she didn't understand him. Not yet, but something in his quiet, measured presence made her feel not safe. Exactly, but less hunted. He stood again and gestured to the fire. Sleep. Heal. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear his boots. She hated the way her voice cracked. Tossanen didn't ask who. Maybe he didn't need to. He walked to the edge of the teepee, pulled a small bundle from a woven bag, and unwrapped it carefully. Dried sage. He lit from the fire and waved the smoke around the space. Then he began to hum, low and rhythmic. Clara watched, eyes wide, not mocking, not judging, just listening. The hum wasn't a song, not in the way she understood it. It was something older, a sound that didn't demand attention, but invited stillness. Her breathing slowed, her fingers uncurled. The fire popped. When she looked up, Tossanen had sat with his back to the wall of the teepee, one leg stretched out, the other bent. He didn't watch her, just the flames. She lay back slowly, eyes on the smoke as it curled toward the ceiling. Thank you, she whispered again. No answer came, but the fire burned steady. And for the first time since the snow took her, she slept without dreaming of Samuel. The air was thinner in the pines. Clara stood at the edge of a snow-dusted clearing, one arm wrapped around her healing ribs, the other gripping a small axe too heavy for her hand. The handle was worn smooth, the blade nicked and rusted. Still, Tossanen had handed it to her that morning without hesitation. Cut kindling, he'd said, pointing to a cluster of down limbs. She hadn't swung an axe since childhood, and even then, only under her father's watchful eye. She stared at the first branch like it was a rattlesnake. Then she struck it. Bad angle. The blade bounced. Again. This time, the wood cracked. She blew a loose strand of hair from her face and muttered, Reckon I'm not built for logging. Tossanen, watching from a distance as he scraped a deer hide clean, only said, Again. By the third swing, her shoulder burned, her grip faltered, and her breath came in short puffs. But something inside her refused to stop, not because she needed firewood, because she needed to know she could. It had been nearly a week since he carried her from the snow. The days blurred, waking to warmth, to bitter teas and bitter medicine, to a man who spoke when needed but never wasted words. She'd learned to boil herbs, to tie a sling, to distinguish the tracks of rabbit from fox. And she'd learned, slowly, not to flinch when he stood too close. He never touched her without asking, never raised his voice, never made her feel small, which made her all the more uneasy when she saw the boot prints. They appeared like ghosts, half melted in the snow not 30 yards from the teepee. Clara spotted them first while fetching water at dawn. Her breath caught as she crouched, brushing the powdery frost away. Not Cheyenne moccasins, not Tossinen's rawhide boots. These were stiff-soled, wide-heeled, familiar. Samuel's. She straightened, heart kicking at her ribs like a trapped colt. Her eyes scanned the trees. Nothing. No movement. No sound but the wind. She ran. Back at camp. She nearly tripped over the woodpile, breath coming in panicked gasps. Tossinen looked up from his work. His eyes sharpened instantly. What? She couldn't speak, just pointed toward the trees, mimicking the shape of a boot with her fingers. His face darkened. He stood without a word, slinging his bow over one shoulder and a knife into his belt. Clara followed despite herself. At the sight, he knelt over the tracks, fingers brushing the edge of one. His jaw flexed. Not old, he said. For hours. Maybe 3. Her voice came hoarse. It's him. I know it. You sure? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They returned to camp in silence. The warmth of the fire suddenly felt like a target. She wanted to run, to vanish into the trees. But another part of her burned with something colder than fear. Tossinen didn't waste time. He packed supplies into a satchel, handed Clara a wrapped hunk of dried meat, then began setting snares along the western edge of the clearing. Every movement precise, intentional. Clara watched, fists clenched at her sides. Finally, he turned to her. You want to run? No. He raised an eyebrow. I want him to. A small nod. He offered her a knife. The handle was bone, the blade obsidian. She took it with shaking fingers. I've never used one. Point goes in, he said dryly, then added, but only if it gets close. She tucked it into the side of her boot, heart pounding. They didn't speak again that day. By dusk, the shadows were long and twitching. The forest held its breath. Clara sat just inside the teepee, axe nearby. Tossinen crouched outside near the fire, bow across his knees. The first shot came from the trees. Not aimed, just loud. Clara flinched. Tossinen rolled behind the fire pit, silent as smoke. A voice called out from the dark. Clara. She froze. Clara, I know you're here. Let's be civil. Samuel's voice. Smooth. Confident. Just like she remembered. You can't seriously be shacking up with a savage now. Come on, darling. I came all this way to get you back. Tossinen didn't move. Just listened. Clara's hands shook, but she stood. Stepped out into the open. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw him. Samuel, mounted on a black gelding, flanked by 2 riders with rifles. His coat was fancier now. His smile was not. You look well, he called, all things considered. You tried to kill me, she said. Samuel grinned. Don't be dramatic. Tossinen emerged beside her, bow raised, arrow notched. Samuel's grin faded. Ah, that explains the bruises. Stockholm, is it? One of the riders lifted a rifle. The bowstring sang. The man dropped like a stone. Chaos erupted. Tossinen moved like a shadow, silent, lethal, already gone before the echo faded. Clara ducked as gunfire cracked through the trees. Samuel cursed, drawing his pistol. Stupid, stupid girl. Clara stepped back, reached into her boot. Samuel dismounted, rushing forward. You're coming with me, he shouted. I didn't drag myself across half this godforsaken territory to let you stay with a redskin. He raised his pistol, but Clara had the knife. She didn't throw it, didn't charge. She just held it steady, straight at his chest. I'm not yours anymore, she said. Samuel's mouth opened, to threaten, maybe to mock. But the second arrow hit him in the leg. He screamed. Tossinen stepped from behind a tree, another arrow already drawn. Samuel dropped the gun. Clara didn't move. Her hands trembled, but she held her ground. You'll die out here, he hissed. No, she whispered. I already did. You just weren't around to bury me. He fell to the snow, groaning. Blood darkened the ground beneath him. Tossin approached slowly, arrow still aimed. Kill me, then, Samuel spat. No, Tossin said. Leave. Clara looked at him, surprised. Leave him. Alive, but afraid. Samuel's eyes widened as the Cheyenne warrior towered over him. You ever come back, Tossin said. Next arrow goes through your eyes. Clara stood over Samuel and dropped the bone-handled knife at his feet. Next time, she said, I won't hesitate. Then she turned. Tossin was already walking back toward the teepee, the firelight flickering against the silhouette. She followed him. Behind them, Samuel whimpered like a dog, dragging himself toward his horse. The clearing fell silent. Later that night, Clara sat by the fire, still trembling. Tossin handed her a blanket, but didn't speak. He simply sat beside her, watching the flames. I should have done it, she murmured. Killed him. No, he said. You chose life. She looked at him. He'll come back. Then we'll be ready. She nodded, curling the blanket tighter. Her hands no longer shook. The thaw came slow. Snow melted in veins along the pines, dripping from needles like quiet teardrops. The wind lost its bite. By early spring, the land shed its white skin and returned in patches of muddy brown and stubborn green. The cold hadn't gone, not fully, but it no longer threatened to swallow her whole. Clara felt the change in her bones. She no longer stumbled when she walked. Her ribs still ached when she bent wrong, but she'd stopped wincing. Her hands, once blistered and bruised, now worked a needle with Cheyenne thread, stitching together a pouch of soft tan hide. She sat outside the teepee, squinting against the afternoon light, listening to the birds fight overhead. She barely thought about the woman she used to be. Tossin emerged from the trees, carrying 2 rabbits and a small woven basket of roots. His bow was slung across his back, shirt damp with sweat. He looked at her and tilted his head in quiet acknowledgement. She returned the look with a small, crooked smile, one that had started to come easier. You need more sinew? He asked. I'm finishing this one. She held up the half-sewn pouch. If I don't stab my thumb first. You bleed, I laugh, he said, deadpan. She gave him a look. Then I'll be sure to get it on your blanket. He grunted, almost a laugh. Almost. That was how things were now, soft, unhurried, but never stagnant. She spent mornings riding with him through the valley, learning which herbs to pull and which snakes to avoid. Afternoons were for hunting lessons, where she still missed more than she hit, though her arrows now stuck in trees instead of spinning off into nowhere. Evenings brought quiet meals, shared stories and fragments. Clara spoke of her childhood in Missouri, of cornfields and Sunday skirts, of a younger sister lost a fever, and a father too stern to grieve out loud. Tossin never interrupted. He listened like each word was an ember, fragile and hot. He told her little about his past, but the things he didn't say told her more than he realized. He had once had a brother. He had once had a wife. She never asked what happened. She could see in the way he looked toward the hills at night, waiting for ghosts that never arrived. She never asked because she understood. Sometimes silence is the only language pain speaks. But even silence shifted with time. One morning, she caught him watching her as she braided her hair. She paused, self-conscious. What? He didn't look away. You look strong. She blinked. Not beautiful? No, he said. That is easy. Strong is better. She swallowed hard, heart pulling tight in her chest. Later that day, he handed her a necklace, carved bone and beads dyed with crushed berries. She held it like it might burn her. No one had given her something handmade since her mother's rosary. What's it for? Protection, he said. She smiled, throat aching. Then you'd better wear it. I already had my dance with death. He stepped closer, the necklace still in his hand. No, you wear. You lived. The sun caught his eyes, dark and storm-stilled. She let him place it around her neck. His fingers brushed her collarbone. For a moment, neither of them breathed. But they stepped away, each pretending not to notice how the silence had changed again. That night, She stood alone at the edge of the clearing, staring into the dark. "I should leave soon," she said aloud, to no one. Tosinan appeared beside her like a shadow. "Why?" "Because I can't live in hiding forever. People will talk, wonder. Let them wonder. You don't understand how they are." Her voice faltered. "A white woman living with a Cheyenne warrior? Even if you save me, they'll call it something else. They'll twist it. And She trailed off, ashamed of the fear in her own voice. He looked at her a long time, then simply said, "Then stay. I don't belong anywhere. You belong here." She shook her head. "With you?" "Yes." Her breath caught. She turned toward him fully, heart racing. "I don't want to be saved anymore," she said. "I want to be chosen." He stepped forward, so close she could feel the heat of him, the grounding steadiness in his presence. "I choose you," he said, "not as a broken thing, not to fix, but as fire, as strength." She felt something rise in her, a cry she hadn't let out, a hunger she buried beneath years of quiet obedience. She reached for him. They didn't speak again that night. The next morning, she woke with her cheek on his shoulder, a blanket drawn over them both, the sun warming the teepee walls. His arm rested lightly around her waist, his breath even. She studied the scar along his jaw, the way he looked younger in sleep, and knew something inside her had changed again. But peace, she'd learned, doesn't come without a fight. The tracks returned 3 days later, deep, pressed hard into the thawing ground. Not just one pair this time. 3, and not from the south. These came from the east. Clara found them near the edge of the river, where the last ice was breaking. Tosinan examined the prints with a frown. "Bounty men," he said. "White, heavy, armed. After me? Maybe, or after land, or blood." That night, they packed what they could, not to flee, but to move higher, toward the hills, a place Tosinan knew, hidden, safe. He insisted it was temporary. Clara knew better. She kept her knife at her hip now, always. They reached the ridge by sundown. The teepee was smaller there, the wind stronger, but the view was clear. If men came, they'd be seen. They came 2 days later. Gunshots echoed through the valley. The first one hit a tree not 10 paces from where Clara had been gathering firewood. She dropped low, heart pounding. Tosinan emerged from the brush, already firing. 2 men charged the slope. Clara ran to the blind he'd built from brush and rock, grabbed the rifle he'd taught her to load. She aimed. Her hands trembled, but her eye didn't. She fired. 1 man dropped. The second one turned to run and slammed into Tosinan's blade. Silence fell again. Only 1 man left, the third. He was smarter, stayed low, crawled into the brush. Then fire bloomed. The third man had lit their shelter. Smoke curled into the sky. Clara screamed and started toward it, but Tosinan caught her. "Let it burn." "We can't. We can rebuild. But they want us afraid. We show them we are not." He took her hand. They didn't chase the third man. They let him flee, limping into the trees. They stood together as the teepee burned, flames licking toward the sky. The necklace around Clara's throat was hot against her skin. That night, they slept under the stars. The next morning, they began walking. Not away, but forward. They rode south, then west, through ravines and open grass, over plains dotted with elk. They didn't speak of revenge. They didn't need to. She was no longer the woman who'd been left to die. She rode with her back straight, her rifle steady. Her voice carried weight. She knew the land now, knew how to fight, knew how to choose. And when they stopped at a distant settlement weeks later, where settlers watched her with curiosity, then suspicion, Clara didn't flinch. She looked them straight in the eye, hand resting on her weapon, and introduced herself in a voice stronger than iron. "I'm Clara Dawson, widow no more, and this is my home now." And when someone asked, half sneering, "You mean with him?" she smiled. "Yes," she said, "with him. With the man who walked into a storm to carry me out. With the man who never asked me to be less." The silence that followed wasn't approval. It didn't need to be. She'd already survived worse. She and Tossanen turned from the crowd and rode west, toward a horizon glowing with firelight and promise. Some called the frontier cruel, but Clara had found its mercy. She had found her trail home,